Aloha Kako and welcome back to Just&True. I'm going to do an extremely brief video just speaking about the military training exercises that are happening right now in Southern California, particularly Los Angeles and the surrounding county. A couple of reasons why I am not sold on the fact that, or the official story of the military telling us that it is for training purposes. There's a few things that I would like to express that kind of caught my eye this morning. They did say that federal and police and private property owners were notified prior to this training. A lot of people are pointing to that as evidence for this to be a training exercise. However, they were only notified 24 to 48 hours before the exercise. It was not planned for weeks or months. At least they did not let the public know for weeks or months ahead of the time. Now, that is not the reason that I'm so suspicious of this. The reason I'm suspicious of this, if you guys recall, back in 2008, maybe 9, we had a similar event like this taking place in Los Angeles with the predecessor of the P8 and with Special Operations Training Forces doing urban environment setting training. Now, this time the P8 which is a high altitude, amazing surveillance system with incredible surveillance modifications and capabilities, including communications and relay and HUD relay support. So there's a lot that this plane does. LA airspace and right above LAX and in that area is the most trafficked, some of the most trafficked airspace in the United States. There is so much heavy air traffic in that area that it is not a good choice for air training. It's not a good choice to have a P8 circling around for hours and hours and hours, which is exactly what it did in the sky. Even if you do alert aircon, and even if you do alert air traffic in the region, it is a huge disturbance to the area. And most of the time when they're doing training exercises, especially when, at least with the aircon, at least with the air and the P8s, they're doing it in a low traffic area, somewhere without so much of a population. I do understand that the official story for this is saying that these special operators do need training in urban environments. I don't believe that either. We have urban environments set up all throughout bases in the United States that are mock bases, mock urban environments that allow operators to go through firehouses, drill houses, fully built buildings to analyze how they'd work and be efficient in combat. So the fact that they're using the most trafficked, one of the most air traffic populated areas in the United States, the fact that it started the drills at night, the fact that people were only made aware 24 to 48 hours prior to this incident, and the fact that they could be doing this in multiple other areas and different situations or in different locales makes me quite suspicious. The other thing is this is happening a day after or 2 days after the Super Bowl, which ultimately, and I'm not saying this is what happened, but this is what could have happened. They could have had a counterintelligence operation in effect. They could have had a threat to the region, and now they're either hunting down, tracing down, or trying to neutralize that threat. Now the island, I think it's St. Nicholas Island or Nicholas Island, right off of LA, is a very it's just conspiracy riddled. It is a training ground for Tomahawk cruise missiles, for other kind of ordnance, and naval ordnance and maritime ordnance, anti-sub, anti-ship, and anti-air ordnance training. So there is a lot of training that goes on in that area, although I do not believe in this time in particular when you're having live round ammo and special operators moving through the region. I don't believe that this could be for training purposes. First of all, there wasn't enough of them to be considered a training purpose. When you're doing training purposes and mock wars, war games, any kind of military training, you're going to have more than a few dudes do it. I think the reports were only about a dozen or so choppers. There's only less than 100, I think, actual soldiers involved in it, and one P8. There's not a lot of training getting done there. There's not a lot of training. Even if they're special operators and they're just Delta, Green Beret, Rangers, stuff like that, combat controllers or PJs, they would usually involve a little bit more manpower and personnel rather than what they're using now. So the region, the air traffic, the fact that, I mean, training has happened here before in the past. They did use surveillance training, but again, I think that when this has happened in the past, it was shortly after there was some sort of threat to the national security. Obviously, if there's a large threat to the national security, a lot of the times they don't just come out and tell the public for whatever reason. So I do believe that they're using that P8 for a very particular reason. It's not just for communications. It's used as a communications hub, so it can relay different communications, it can receive communications, it can block communications. There's a lot of things that this P8 can do. It has amazing surveillance as well. But when you're at home, when you're in LA, you don't need a hub, communications hub. You don't need a communications relay. You don't need to block any communications. But what you could be doing is using the HD high-powered surveillance to try and find something or somebody. I don't think, again, you're going to need that for training purposes. You're not going to need to record your people for training purposes from that high altitude when you're in LA, because you can obviously just have crews on the ground filming for training purposes. You're not going to need, or one of the mini choppers that they're using. So, in my own opinion, if you're using a handful of special operators, if you're using a handful of small choppers, and a single surveillance and communications aircraft, then there's not enough manpower there for it to be considered a training exercise, and it's not an area that you would normally be training in. It's also in a high threat area where the Department of Defense and Pentagon finds that they will most likely, if there ever is any kind of attack on our soil, is one of the hot spots where they believe it may happen. So piecing all this together, looking at the timing, the numbers, the people involved, the short heads up, I do think that there's definitely something else going on besides training. I'm not sure if we're going to hear about this in the future or if something may come of it. I do know that this isn't the only day for training. I believe the training's supposed to go on for another couple of days, training. But who knows? I could be horribly wrong. A lot of the time I am. But if you were to look at any kind of training, especially this type of particular training in the region, it is much different. The MO is different. The setting is different. The manpower is different. The surplus is different. So it's just a little bit of a unique operation that is going on here. Now that P8 just ran circles in the region, there's circles and circles and circles, and the P8 is something that we have used a lot. The United States has deployed the P8. The United States has the P8 all over the place. There's no reason for that thing to need any type of training. It's got constant activity throughout the world. The operators that they used are very significant, very awesome special operators that also do not need the training to be going through LA, street sweeping, clearing houses, clearing large buildings, clearing streets. It's not something that they need to brush up on. These are special operators that are constantly training on military ground. They're also being deployed all throughout the world. We're deployed like 62 to 83 different countries right now in active locations. So in my personal opinion, and that's all that it is, I do not think that this makes sense as a training purpose. I don't think that the training involved in it would necessarily be beneficial to the operators. I don't think that the training involved in it would be beneficial to the pilots or to any of the support located in the P8 or any of the P8 support on ground. I do not think that there is enough operators involved to be even considered a training exercise. I think the area and the weather conditions were both abysmal. Weather conditions for LA is horrible. It was horrible at the time. Visibility was low, and none of it makes sense. I'll continue to report on this. I know that there's a lot of people doing their research on it and getting it out. I just am concerned at this point that there's something that we are not being told, and I am concerned at this point that if they say it's going to be happening for days, that they're going to be looking for something for days. But again, could be completely wrong. But anyway, aloha, mahalo for coming in, and until next time, e hui hou.